My game of the day from round 5 of the Tata Steel Chess Tournament is Sergei Karjakin against Adhiban Bhaskaran. Now Karjakin so far having a pretty reasonable tournament on +1. Now he really needed to target Adhiban and try to win this game if he was going to keep pace with the leaders. Adhiban, well, not having the best tournament so far, 1 out of 4. But he is one of the weakest in the tournament. He's a strong player, we know that. He won the Challengers tournament last year to qualify. But he doesn't have that much experience in these kind of elite tournaments. Interesting to see him play the French today. As he said afterwards, he'd never played the French before, and he only decided to play this opening yesterday. Well, 24 hours to learn an opening. That's pretty good going. Let's see how it turned out. 93, and he played the classical. Well, I'm a fan of the classical variation. I always feel that this allows black good counter-attacking chances. On the queen side, a bit like in the Sicilian, you often play down the c-file. Well, there's a lot more to it than that. And this move bishop e7, well, there are many ways that black can play this position. You can take here and play the bishop out to c5. You can play a6 and b5 straight away. You can also play with queen b6. But bishop e7 is quite a trendy way of playing the position, and this is a move I actually recommended in my DVD on the French. I like this very much. Simple idea, castle kingside, and you basically try to set up a nice attack on the queen side, or a counter attack. But it's very double-edged. White has a space advantage and can try to attack on the king side. a6, so potentially preparing b5. Karjakin has actually played this position before, and he exchanged on c5 and played bishop d3. This was against Nakamura in Beijing in 2012. But I'm afraid he didn't have a very good experience with this. In this position, Nakamura already had a very strong attack on the queen side. So coming back here, Karjakin, after 6.5 minutes thought, he clearly wasn't expecting Adhiban to play the French, why should he? a3. Well, a mysterious little move, but actually quite common in these kind of positions. And this was played by Vladimir Kramnik in the Baku Olympiad just a few months ago, and Karjakin would have seen that game. Kramnik won a really nice game against the German player Georg Mayer. And, well, let's see what happened. Castles. And now queen f2, so attacking the knight. And this game, Kramnik-Mayer went b6, defending the knight, now b4, pushing the knight back, and then bishop d3. And now we can see one of the ideas behind a3. It's to advance with b4. And this b-pawn controls the c5 square, and that really cramps black's pieces. Of course, it's unlikely that white's king is going to end up on the queen side. This would be too vulnerable. But positionally, this is a very interesting way for white to play. Actually, it's a fantastic game if you have a chance to play through it. Kramnik against Mayer from Baku. But here, Adhiban played knight d7. He played that after precisely 4 seconds thought, so he was ready. It's a very interesting move. The difference is between the game we've just looked at is that after b4, black can play f6, and suddenly black has a really strong counter-attack. And the same goes for, let's say, bishop d3. f6 is also appropriate there. Recapturing the knight, that's an irritating threat. And f6 is particularly appropriate when the queen stands on f2, because, you know, obviously that is a real target. For example, after h3 to stop knight g4, then knight h5, and suddenly, well, that's under fire. You might be able to get in e5, exploiting this pin. I think a very interesting move from Adhiban, and he said afterwards this was actually a suggestion of his coach, but it's somehow a very logical move. It looks strange to go back again, but actually f6 is the idea. So here we go, knight d4, and that seems pretty sensible to blockade d4, and of course stops any f6 ideas for the moment. So black exchanged, and only now played f6. So still going for this idea, and again I think very appropriate when the queen stands on f2. So this had to be exchanged. And now Karjakin exchanged on f6. Adhiban said afterwards he thought that castle's queenside was the principal move, but presumably Karjakin was worried about e5, again using this kind of pin here. If pawn takes, then of course bishop g5 check opens up the f file. That's check, of course. And then bishop c5, that gets taken. Now there's big pressure against the pawn here, but, well, I mean, but white is more active here. White can recapture this in, well, however way he likes, really. White is more active, but one feels that with this bishop, black should be okay. Let's go back. But instead, Karjakin exchanged on f6. Now there's a threat to the pawn at f4, so g3, and now g5, very bold move. Adhiban was playing these moves instantly. 5 seconds he took over g5. That's a bit unpleasant for Karjakin to face. And after 4 minutes, he castled queenside. Now we've got a very double-edged situation because white is giving up a pawn, but of course black's king is potentially rather exposed, and black's queenside development is, well, hasn't started yet really. So tricky position. Here maybe rook d4 is an idea to force the situation a little bit. Perhaps force an exchange, and queen takes, check, and so on after that. There's even an idea maybe to play something like queen d2 or queen e3 and try to recapture with the h pawn to open up the h file. That's an interesting idea. So white certainly has compensation there. But instead Karjakin played king b1. So Adhiban, after 8 minutes thought, pushed the pawn to f3. Now not only does that hold the pawn pretty far advanced, but it closes the g file for the moment as well. Now g4. So this is Karjakin's idea. He wants to try to open things up on the king side anyway. But somehow, you know, the queen is not a good blockader. Knight e5, good move. Knight, very powerful piece in the centre of the board. Queen g7. And here, maybe h4 is the best try, just holding the position for the moment. Black, I know optically, you know, when black has the centre, it looks very powerful, but it is. Black stands better here. But black is still only 1 pawn up, so there's a lot of play still left in that position. But instead, Karjakin played very aggressively. He clearly was desperate to play for a win here and was just throwing everything at his opponent. Tricky situation. Knight takes, then rook g1. Well, perhaps there's more possibility for an attack there, but Adhiban played very sensibly. Pawn takes. And, I mean, white could advance the h-pawn, but actually, you know, black is just going to keep the position closed. That pawn can always be blocked by the king on h8. And now there are potentially two connected passed pawns rolling down the board, so that doesn't really help matters. So bishop d3. Bishop d7, black has to try and connect his pieces. And here rook dg1, well, that's very committal. Unless things work out for white on the king side, then those rooks are really kind of bunched together and not very effective. Rook g1 probably a better move, a better try, although after something simple like rook f6 just to hold the pawn and prepare perhaps the rook, other rook swinging over. I mean, black is obviously better here. Rook g1. So Adhiban took on d3 and then played rook f5. This is all good. So black 2 pawns up and pretty solid. And now the other rook came over. Now doubling on the g file, but this can be taken care of by the bishop. This bishop, as so often the case in the French, looks very passive, but very often that light squared bishop can come to life at a certain moment in the game. Now, white really can't make any more progress on the king side. This pawn advance doesn't get anywhere. The rook covers here. The only piece that isn't playing or might be able to make a difference is the knight. So therefore, knight d1. Now here, well, this next move, rook h5, is inaccurate. It doesn't spoil anything yet. But, well, Adhiban just kind of got a bit confused around here. I think the problem is there are no direct threats that black has to meet, so it's not so easy to play. In any case, h4 was played. Queen g3 looks like it could be a good move with the idea knight f2, and the knight is certainly a better blockade than the queen, but in this case queen e5 is a good move. Just wanting to trade queens, and if rook takes, in fact, this gets nowhere. The king is actually safe on the h file. Anyway, h4 was played, and now Adhiban realised that the rook was really doing nothing on the h file and swung back to e5. Good idea. So he wants to play rook e2, and after knight e3, now bishop b5. So that bishop is springing into the game. Obviously, rook takes. I'm afraid it does not work terribly well. Check, and then you come back to take the rook. And this is very nasty, because if black can get the bishop here, then it's outside the pawn chain. And yeah, black is obviously, the bishop is protects the pawn on g6. It looks fantastic, and this is a very unpleasant threat. d4, well, bishop d3 is a good move, but in fact the tactics work for black now. And then f2, pawn goes home, and there's no really good move here. King c2 doesn't work because suddenly black springs into attack. Rook takes, and that opens up this line. Rook g6 isn't possible because of a check, and rook c1. And if king e3, well, unsurprisingly, black's going to deliver some horrible thing. Afterwards, Adhiban said he would simply do this and take here. And that's still no good because it's a discovered check. I mean, obviously black is going to be winning there. Rook d4 was played to protect the pawn, but then simple move, rook e4, opening up the queen's diagonal. If pawn takes rook, then queen takes. Rook g6 looks dramatic for a moment, but actually there's precisely nothing doing. One little trap, you have to avoid this, and suddenly that can't be taken because of knight g4 check. Of course, very simply, king f7, and when the rook goes back, pawn takes, and this is fantastic. There's no attack for white, and black can lock everything together. In fact, Karjakin blundered with the rook takes g6 and lost immediately after bishop takes d3. And here Karjakin resigned. If rook takes bishop, then queen takes, and black is a whole exchange up and has all those lovely pawns as well. So superb victory from Adhiban Baskaran. First time he's ever played the French, and he said Karjakin was the strongest player he's ever beaten. Absolutely superb. So that brings him to 2 out of 5. Wesley So won today, so he's on 4 out of 5 with Carlsen and Ulyanov on 3.5. Oh, by the way, do check out the 99 seconds interview with Adhiban that we recorded in Beale a couple of years ago. He's a really nice guy. He comes across very well.